Let's start with a question. Why are you, you? I mean, there are surely people who look like you and share your interests, but when you get down to it, you're a one of a kind. You have a unique mix of personality, skills, weaknesses, so many factors that when combined, make you a unique individual. If knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom, and we consider that leaders should be wise, then your journey towards becoming a leader begins with understanding how your mind works, where your beliefs come from, and how beliefs about yourself are fundamental to your performance as a person, as a pilot, and as a leader. In trying to discover what makes people unique, it's interesting to think about the case of identical twins. If you recall, identical twins are brothers or sisters who are born from within minutes of each other and have identical genetic code. There are several stories about identical twins who grow up in an identical environment. Same home, same parents, they have the same ethnicity, the same social class, they go to the same school, they have the same teachers. And almost everything about their upbringing is exactly the same. And in many cases, they share a very similar kind of personality. And yet, sometimes, they can end up being very different people with different personalities and different interests. So while we used to think that individuals were the product of what we called nature, their genetic makeup, versus nurture, their environment, there obviously has to be some other factor that shapes human individuality. What do you think could explain identical twins who had identical upbringings being totally unique individuals? So beyond nature and nurture, there are other forces that shape us into the individuals that we are. And that force can be called human agency, which is, simply put, our capacity to make choices. Now, most of our choices are involuntary and unconscious, like the things we notice, the things we value, the things we fear. Other choices are more intentional, like what you want for lunch, or goal-directed, like deciding to become a pilot. Together, these involuntary and intentional choices create our unique selves. They determine how we think and how we feel and behave. While you can't do anything about your genetic makeup or your upbringing, as an evolving leader, you can choose to understand and use your human agency, your ability to choose how you think, to maximize your potential. To understand this, let's take a look at how your mind works, how it processes information and produces the beliefs that we hold about our world and our place in it. Your brain is trying to help you survive in the world that you live in, to avoid dangers and keep you fed. And it does this by perceiving your surroundings and then helping you decide what to do about it. Imagine for a moment that you're a caveman looking for an animal. Your brain notes that the animal isn't too big or too scary, and your family is hungry. So your brain triggers a behavior, hunting. This observation, decision, and action process continues. But as you get closer, another animal appears, one that you associate with danger instead of dinner. And your mind sets off alarms and makes you want to run away to safety. With this basic model, you can already see that by processing what is going on in the world outside of you and self-evaluation, your mind is helping you make choices that drive your behaviors in the world. When we talk about the mind, we're referring to the part of the brain involved in perception, thought, memories, and emotions. The first thing to understand about your mind is that it has three main areas with different responsibilities. The conscious mind, which is where I hope you are right now as you watch this presentation, is involved in thinking, planning, setting goals, and it's where your short-term memory lives. If you try to recall what you had for breakfast today, you're using your short-term memory. Your conscious mind is limited. You can only really think of one thing or pay attention to one thing at a time. And studies have shown that we can only remember 7 to 9 bits of information in our short-term memory. This is why telephone numbers are usually no longer than 9 digits in most of the world. While your conscious mind is limited, your subconscious mind is vast. It holds your long-term memories. If you try to recall your 16th birthday, you're accessing your long-term memory. It's also where your beliefs about yourself and the world live, along with your desires, fears, and the parts of your brain that create your emotions. Finally, located near the back of your head, at the top of your neck, is the oldest part of the brain, the primitive, ancient brain. It manages automatic life systems like your nervous, immune, and respiratory systems. This unconscious part of the mind has one main goal, and that is to survive. So if you place your hand on a fire, you don't need emotions or desires or logic or thinking to move it off quickly. So the conscious part of your mind is trying to understand what's going on in the world around you. So it's perceiving and taking in information and trying to understand what it all means. And it does this by accessing parts of your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is trying to validate your perceptions against your current knowledge and your beliefs. So when you see the shape of that animal, your subconscious mind is comparing against previous memories and experiences and beliefs to answer the question, what is that thing? Is it dangerous? Is it delicious? The subconscious is busy comparing what you perceive to what you believe to help you decide how to act. Now, of course, these parts of the mind don't just work on their own. They're actually constantly working together. Let's look at how they do that. Our conscious mind processes our perceptions. That is, processing what we see, hear, smell, touch, and taste. But we just talked about how the conscious mind is limited. After all, it can only remember a 9-digit phone number. So our subconscious mind comes to the rescue by actively preventing too much information from getting in. It does this by filtering and selecting all the information that's coming at it and only providing what it thinks is important for our conscious mind to perceive. People who cannot effectively filter their perceptions suffer from mental and emotional pain because there's so much information coming at them. Have you ever noticed that when you were interested in something, you saw it everywhere you went? Maybe you were looking for an apartment and suddenly you saw for rent signs everywhere you looked. Or you noticed how few for rent signs there were. Or you were interested in a car and suddenly everywhere you looked, you saw that car. Does this sound familiar? Here's one I bet you can relate to. As you started getting interested in aviation, I bet you started noticing every plane that flew over, every advertisement or news story that mentioned airplanes. Am I right? Can you think of any other examples from your life? Any other times that you just started noticing stuff everywhere you looked? So your mind has chosen what it's going to ignore and what it's going to pay attention to. Next, whatever information you have perceived is going to be associated with your subconscious memories of other experiences that are similar. I bet there's a song that when it comes on the radio, it takes you right back to a certain time or place in your life. Maybe even makes you think of a certain person. Or let's say a friend calls you up and asks you to go see a movie. You probably get an image in your mind of a movie theater, the plush seats, the smell of popcorn. And maybe they suggested a specific movie. And so you think of the actors, recalling other movies that you've seen them in. So now your mind is going to evaluate. It's going to ask itself, do I believe that going to this movie would be a good use of my time and of my money? Am I interested? And what kind of attitude do I have about those actors in the film? This evaluation process calls on your beliefs, your values, and your attitudes, which to a great degree came from your memories of similar experiences and the sense that you made out of those experiences. If the last time you saw a movie with this actor, you were thrilled, then you've told yourself and formed the belief that they're a great actor. Or you may have heard from friends or people in the media talk about how bad that actor is. So all these factors go into your evaluation process. Finally, given your association and evaluation of the incoming information, your mind decides what to do. Is it going to go to the movies? Is it going to run away from the dangerous animal? Is it going to vote for A or for B? At its core, this decision-making process is about actions, determining what to do or not do. And this all happens at lightning speed, possibly thousands of times a day. As you go about your day today, just try to notice all the little decisions that you make. You constantly have information filtering in, associating to other memories. You're subconsciously evaluating against what you believe and feel, and then deciding what to do. And it could be anything from what you want for lunch, having a conversation with a friend, or executing a maneuver in an aircraft. Now, recall that one of the main goals of the subconscious mind is to validate what we perceive. It's validating those perceptions against our beliefs of what is real. And it wants to be right. That is, we want to believe that our version of reality is right. Nobody wants to think that they have a wrong belief. Our beliefs both constrain and focus our perceptual filters, helping us only notice things that confirm our beliefs about reality and ourselves. And every time you use that filter and notice things that fit with your beliefs, it reinforces and amplifies that belief. So if you believe, for example, that you're not as smart as other students, that selective perception that we talked about earlier will make you notice examples of when others performed better than you did, and you'll stop noticing cases when you may have done a good job or made an important contribution. The main point here is that you are in control of your belief system, your beliefs about yourself, about others, about the world, and those beliefs, especially the beliefs about yourself, can either enhance or degrade your learning, your performance, and your growth. So we see how beliefs get reinforced by affecting what you even notice. But where do they come from in the first place? Well, the most obvious answer is your direct experience. The things that you saw, that you heard and smelled and tasted and touched yourself. There are also vicarious or indirect experiences. You may not have been to a certain country, but you may have seen some shows on television and in doing so formed an opinion and a belief about it. And finally, there are social inputs, the things you hear from friends and from family, people you know. These are their beliefs about the world and about you and who you are, and these can be both positive and negative. Now, just because you're exposed to these inputs doesn't mean that they automatically become part of your belief system. When you take in information, when you remember it, you think about it and run it over in your mind, you're talking to yourself. I've heard a lot of people say that they can't draw. And it's interesting that so many people believe they can't draw. And when you talk to people about where they got that belief, very often you get a story that's similar to this. Oh, I was a kid and I showed some drawings to my older brother. And when he saw it, he kind of said, well, that doesn't look very realistic. And did that a few times, and then I kind of internalized that, whereas I was drawing, I was looking at it and judging it and saying, I'm not good at this. Why am I even trying this? And then you fast forward 20 years and you find yourself up in front of a group of people apologizing for your drawings. Well, how did that happen? Okay, maybe you're saying, I don't talk to myself, but just a quick experiment. I want to challenge you to remember a time that somebody criticized you or told you you weren't doing something the right way. For me, my little voice, my self-talk, starts either trying to think about how they're wrong, or in some cases, I start beating myself up, thinking of other examples of when I've made mistakes. But aviation training involves a lot of critique, as more experienced pilots will give you feedback on what you did well and not so well. And as you learn, you will make mistakes, and you will receive critique. When we receive negative feedback and critique, we tend to want to either not take responsibility, feel frustrated with ourselves, or look for ways to improve. And this self-talk is what ends up building and reinforcing our self-image. That is, our beliefs about who we are and what we're capable of. Your self-image is made up of many parts, but one part, your self-efficacy, has to do with your belief in your ability to organize and execute actions required to manage situations. This is how the psychologist Albert Bandura phrased it. He invented the term. To put it simply, self-efficacy is your belief in your ability to do things. Successful people and good leaders typically have high self-efficacy. The observable behaviors of people with high self-efficacy are that they view problems as challenges to be mastered, develop strong commitment to their interests and activities, and are able to recover quickly from setbacks, while people with low self-efficacy typically avoid challenges. They often believe that difficult situations are beyond their capabilities, and they quickly lose confidence in their personal abilities when met with challenges. As you look at these lists, is it clear to you what all the stuff about self-image and beliefs have to do with aviation leadership? Now, you're flying airplanes, which means that to some degree you already believe in your ability to organize and execute the course of action required to manage situations. But there are two things to add to this. One, you're only human, which means that just like everyone else, you have some self-doubt and engage in some self-talk that takes you away from your best performance, your best you. And number two, as an evolving leader, part of your role is to help others build and maintain their self-efficacy so that they can do their best. And we're going to look soon at steps you can take to build self-efficacy in yourself and in others. Flight training involves taking in huge amounts of information, practicing new things, and receiving critique from teachers. Your self-talk and your beliefs about yourself are yours. They're nobody else's. You can let every mistake bring you down, or you can decide to have a learning mindset, a growth mindset, where you understand that all experiences are learning experiences. Keep in mind that the people training you and every leader that you meet will have traveled down the same path successfully. Every successful leader overcomes fear, anxiety, and uncertainty. It takes effort to control self-talk. But if you start to listen to what you're saying to yourself about yourself, you'll start to realize that you have control over what that voice says.